it really seems to me so vital, and so much the issue in these days, these strange society in which we live today. It's verse 9, of course, Colossians 1 and verse 9, and so from the day we heard of it, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. That you may be filled with all the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And that's my job, to explain to you what God's will is. That's what's important. And though I agree with the enthusiasm of us all here for obeying, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, and obeying God, I am generally for that. So I agree with that. Yet I do think that the great problem today is not that issue of obeying the will of God, but it is this issue of being filled with the knowledge of his will, in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And I really think most people have no idea what that's about at all, And it's too easy for us ourselves, to go to that verse and come away with the idea, yeah, that's what they need. They need a knowledge of God's will. That's really what they need. And part of my job is, as I go around selling this jewelry, is to make that clear to them. Make clear to them what God's will is, and give them a knowledge of his will. And that's why it's important to discuss this business of abortion, and put them right about it. Make it very clear to them now what they should, what is God's will for abortion, and what is God's will for Trump, and what is God's will for the European situation, and what is God's will for the mess that finances are in the banks. My job is to explain God's will to them. And of course, you don't need me to tell you that so often, it's very honorable, and it's admirable, to be concerned with explaining to them God's will. But you know yourself, so often it ends up not explaining God's will or any interest in God's will. It ends up explaining the law to them, It ends up discussing the ethics of abortion or the ethics of managing money. It ends up with things and views and doctrinal issues. And you finish the conversation and you realize, well, at least they know what I think about this subject. And I hope that I've cleared them up about some of the vagueness they have, because it's vagueness that is destroying this society. It's people not knowing what is right and what is wrong. And I'm with you. Part of the trouble is that. Part of the trouble undoubtedly is a great ignorance. But I would submit to you that that isn't the deepest problem that exists, and that many of them are clear what abortion is and whether it's right or wrong. And they are clear about all the other ethical subjects. And often you do just end up congratulating each other, well, I'm glad you see it the way I do. But there's something unsatisfying about it. I mean, you feel, well, I did talk about important things here, and I did make my point clear and my position, So at least they know that, and to that extent I've certainly dealt with this great issue of the day that we knew would come about in the times of the Antichrist, when men would not know what is right and what is wrong. So I have contributed to that. I've contributed to the sense of what is right. So in that way I've borne a good witness today. But there's still a dryness to it. I mean, you still have a feeling, well, I did my duty, and certainly I've shared the knowledge of God's will with them, as this verse says. Pray that you may be filled with a knowledge of God's will. And I don't know about the rest of it, but certainly they have more understanding of God's will now. I don't know that I'd say they're filled with a knowledge of His will, but they have a knowledge of His will. If I forget about whether filled is important or not, they have a knowledge of His will that they didn't have before, and to that extent they're further along than they were. I don't know too much about in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, but I've done the first bit. And yet there's something, you feel, well, yeah, I did it, and it is, they know it better than they did. They're clear about it. Wasn't much life in it. I don't know that I feel they're much closer to God, but they're certainly clear about what's what. And they're certainly clear what I think. And they probably have been helped somewhat themselves. This will maybe help them in the future. And of course, that isn't the problem, really. It's part of the problem, but that's not the deepest problem at all. Because we know that the knowledge of His will gets back to the whole business of why on earth has He made us? I mean, why did He make us? I mean, did He make us so that we'd all put up our hands and say, yeah, I'm for this, no, I'm against that, no, I'm for this, I'm against that? Well, that's going to be pretty boring if we're going to do that for eternity. Oh, what do you think about this subject, and what do you think about well, we'd wear ourselves out. Besides, you'd come to the end of the discussion surprisingly quickly. So why on earth did He make us, Why did He make us? To have debates, to have a debating society, to have discussion groups, to express our views to each other. And of course He didn't. Of course He didn't. Of course we would be bored to tears with each other here. If all we had of interest was to discuss politics or to discuss this point of the law or this point of obedience. We like to be together. You enjoy each other. You just enjoy each other. It's fun to be together. You just like each other. You feel close to each other. We feel we understand each other. We feel we think the same things and we feel the same things and we have the same attitudes. We could happily sit with each other and not say a word, and it would be just nice to be together. And of course, we sense that's what our Father, that's why He made us. He made us so that we could love Him and so that He could love us. That's why He put us here. And He put us here so that we'd know exactly what He was like, and we'd see where we weren't like that, and we would become like that. And we would be like Him, and we would enjoy being with Him because we were like Him. And we were like Him because part of Him was inside us, His dear Son. And we would say that's what the knowledge of God's will is. It's knowing what God is after in this situation. And that's what we said last time we talked. It's knowing what God is trying to bring about, what he really wants in this situation, and what he's trying to do in this situation, and why he's doing it. Why he said to us, I've called you friends. I haven't called you servants. Because a servant doesn't know what his Lord is doing. He doesn't know why he's doing it. He has no idea what is in his heart when he's doing it. But a friend does know. And I've called you friends because I want you to know why I'm doing this. I want you to know what I'm after. I want you to think the same way as I think, to feel the same things as I feel. I want us to enjoy being together. I want you to be like me, and I want to be like you. And so we know that that's part of the knowledge of God's will, that you may know what God is trying to bring about here. What is he after? Nobody has a clue. Nobody even thinks that. Nobody thinks of that. I bet you, as you go around the shops, they never think of that. What is God after? I don't know what he's after. I don't even know why the things are happening that are happening in this world. I don't know what he's after. I have no idea what he's like. Oh, I know he's my Heavenly Father or something, and his Son is Jesus Christ, but I have no idea. It beats me. I don't know why he lets half the thing happen that happened. I haven't a clue. And will I like him when I meet him? I don't know if I'll ever meet him. I don't know if he'd have anything to do with me if I did meet him. And I don't know whether I'd like him or not. I never think about that. That's it. They never think about that. And I put it to you, in Christendom, I don't think there are many people who think about that. I don't think many people think, I wonder what God is really like. I mean, it may cross their mind for a second, but that's it, a second. But I don't think they know. I don't think they think he's interested in what they think. And I don't think they're interested in what he thinks. But that's what the knowledge of his will is. That's what he's praying for. That they will have a knowledge of God's will, that they will understand what God is like and what he's after and what he's trying to bring about. Most of all, they'll be interested. Most of all, they'll be interested. They'll be interested in knowing why is he doing what he's doing? Why is he doing this? Not is he against abortion. And you know, that's that way back. Anybody that is on either side of the abortion issue, anybody that is on either side, the deep, deep thing that nobody is much concerned about is what the wee girl feels who's been caught. You know, what the wee soul is feeling that's been caught. And the baby, the baby in the way that it's a baby, you know, it's an embryo. It's a little animal. But the baby, as a little baby, a little feeling baby, I mean, it would make you weep. Wouldn't it? Would make you weep. Baby, who cares about the baby, you know? Oh, we all care about the baby. That is the baby as a thing, you know, as a number, as another case that we can make. But does anybody really feel for the silly wee girl that has got herself into the trouble? Or the little baby that will be? It's quite heartbreaking. So heartbreaking, I don't know that, but I'll tell it as quickly as I can. It's in the New York Times this weekend. What happens in China these days is they can't get jobs. Many of them can't get jobs. They're away in the... Oh, I'm sorry. They're away in the back of beyond in China. Chizhou, I think, is the name of this little city. In a desolate part of China. And there are no jobs. So the couples end up, of course, coupling and having children. And this couple had 4 children. And this is reproduced all over China. They had 4 children and no jobs. So, first of all, the man goes off to a distant city, miles and miles away, and gets a job. And the wife works on. But it isn't enough money. She goes off and gets a job. And this is one instance that they've outlined in the New York Times this weekend. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of these going on throughout China. The 2 parents are working in different factories in different cities. And the 4 children are left in the house to go to school and to take care of themselves. The eldest is 14, the boy. The others are 6, 5, 2, that kind of thing. And they came back every year, once a year, to see the children. Otherwise the children just looked after themselves in the house. Went to school, etc. After the wife missed 1 year. So she came back this last time after 2 years away.
They didn't hurt for food.
That's right. They had food. They had food and they had clothes. But of course, they had nobody looked after them or was interested in them or cared for them. So the boy wrote the letter. Thanks for your kindness. To all the neighbours, who of course hadn't very much time to give. Thanks for your kindness, but we must go now. He drank pesticides, Thanks for your kindness, but we must go now. In another part of the letter he said, I thought I wouldn't see 15, so now I'll know at 14 what it's like. And they were cremated the next day, But it's that total missing of it, that runs throughout our society. And of course we're all concerned, with the social problems. And this problem, such a shame, of abortion, and this view or that view. But the little souls themselves It's as if we've forgotten what heart is. And so the knowledge of God's will is badly lacking, but not in the sense that we all think. We all know what we're supposed to say He wants. We're all clear about the ethics and the politically correct views. And we all can be very clear on doctrinal issues and arguments about the Bible or about evolution. And we're all very good, and I'm sure you all have fallen into the same trap, we're all very good at advising people what they should do, and how they should run their Bible study or their prayer life, or what they should think of this issue or that issue. We're very good at that. But at transmitting God's heart, at getting them even to be interested in what God feels, it's just a blankness. And you know it. There's just a blankness. Who would ever think of, I wonder what God feels? A very odd time we'll use that phrase, But it's significant in our memories because it's so rare that we use it. Nobody is interested in what God feels. Nobody thinks, does God feel? When a disaster takes place, do we all say, I wonder how God feels when He sees these bodies scattered on the ground after a plane crash? I mean, He made each one of them individually. He had all kinds of hopes for them. It must break His heart. Have you ever heard anybody say that? Have you ever even thought of it yourself? So there's a lot to do. And of course, here is the wonder of this truth. It's very manageable. It's a very reasonable and interesting talk to have. Because you say something of this to a person, and they say to you, well, I mean, how can I know what God feels? Well, He sent the Spirit of His Son into your heart. What? Yeah. Aren't there some times when you're going to do something with a customer and something springs up inside you, just it's a kindness, and you feel, oh, for this, I'll give them this little extra box. It'll help them to enjoy this gift, or they can use it to give to somebody. Doesn't that happen at times? At times, there's a little thought comes into your mind. You don't know where it's from, but it's a nice thought. It's a kindly thought. It's a generous thought. Sometimes it's to your own detriment. But have you thought that? Yeah. But I mean, that's just conscience. Yeah, but isn't it true that the good has to come from somebody? The good that comes into your conscience has to come from somebody. I agree with you. There are many things that you do by conscience just because you've been taught to do it, or your society says you should do it. But aren't there things that you do that you don't know where it's come from? That's God's Son trying to speak to you and giving you a thought, an idea. So there's a whole realm of discussion that you can enter into that is interesting. It's interesting. It's not dead. It's not dead old religion or ethics. It's kind of interesting. And they can say, well, yeah, I mean, I never thought of that. Well, that's part of what it means. God sent, the Bible happens to say that, God sent the Spirit of His Son into our hearts. God has put into each one of us something of what He wants to do through us. That's why you're different from everybody else. It opens a whole world, opens a whole world. So that's part of what this verse is about. Pray that you may have a knowledge of God's will, and then in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And then you get into the whole wisdom thing, and the truth, knowledge is truth. Knowledge is truth, and wisdom is how to use truth. And to get into that whole business of situations then, and what would God do in this situation? And of course it's wonderful for a person who doesn't go to church at all, because he can then take part in that kind of conversation, Well, yeah, I wonder what God would, and it can be kind of light in a way, and yet there's truth in it because you have spoken to something that he's experienced in his life. And of course, there's a desperate need for it today. There's a desperate need for some people who would be interested in what God's heart is and what his heart is really like and why they're here. And of course, it's what is desperately lacking in our society. That's why I told the story about the children. Because our society can read that and can drop a few tears momentarily. And back we go to the normal. We just get used to it. And you have to admit, we're getting used to the shootings. We're getting used to all kinds of dreadful things. Numbers of people being killed, hideous situations where ministers that are living next door, as in that shooting in the prayer meeting, ministers who live in the same block as the guy who comes and kills them. So our society is getting harder and harder and more unfeeling. And it loves to discuss things. It loves to discuss abortion. It loves to discuss politics. It loves to discuss your views on this or that. But the whole realm of what our attitudes are, and above all what God's attitude is, there's great deafness and great blindness. So I would suggest to you that it's something to think about and to pray about and to examine yourself on, because you can, in a way, you can guide a conversation. And of course this leads to an open-ended conversation. There's just an openness about it, and there's nowhere where you're afraid to go with it, because it's expressing things that echo in their hearts when you say them. And of course, behind it all is the sense of warmth. Suddenly, a person begins to think, that's interesting. I've always thought religion was a kind of a cold thing, a dead, formal thing, a thing full of political views and attitudes, but I suppose that's right. God must be a person, and he must have feelings like us. He must have an attitude of some kind. And of course it opens the way then into your own attitude to him. and that he is. It begins to dawn on people. Maybe he knows what I'm doing. I wonder, does he? I wonder, does he know? I wonder I wonder, would it be okay to be with him after life? Would he be nice to be with? So there's a whole world, of truth that this verse points to, and that I think is our real task as witnesses. I think that's what we're witnesses to, Witnesses to the heart of God. And I think that's part of what God has called us to do in our internet, To introduce people to the whole concept of God's heart and what is God thinking and feeling about us these days, and what does he want us to be like himself. Let us pray.